You're in Braves country.
All right, good afternoon, Braves country. As we took us a second to get the TikTok one loaded up, that's why we played the intro a couple of times. But we are live and rolling on both our YouTube feed, Braves Country Radio, and our TikTok feed on Braves Country X. And we're going to go ahead and bring in Braves Country Radio over on Facebook because that's always a hassle. But anyways, another disappointing series for the Braves. And it's easy to forget that we just won 3 of our last 4. So it's not all doom and gloom, right? It's not to the point where we're all like, but at the same token, the biggest question has to be asked at this point in this season. And that is, are the Braves any good? I mean, is this even a good team? And I think that's a valid question at this point in the season when you're talking about going at, we are once again struggling at 19-21, 2 games under 500. We started the season off at 0-7, so that's got a lot to do with our current standings. But then again, you lose 2 of 3 to the Pirates. I don't care what anybody says. It's not acceptable. Even if it is on the road. And even though Bailey Falter, I thought, pitched a really good game, and Ledzinski gave them a good game. And honestly, the Pirates pitching was a lot better than advertised. But I feel like that's got a lot to do with the fact that the Braves offense is extremely overrated. I don't believe anymore that this is a team that can score at will. I don't believe anymore that this is a team that you can rely on the offense night in and night out. I think it's a team that relies heavily on the starting pitching, and they need the bullpen to have a good game as well. And that's really what it's come down to, and you hope to scrape out some runs. and our record's much better. I've seen the stats. It changes every day, but I've seen the stats where the record's much better if we score 4 runs or more. But that's pretty much every baseball team. Because if you can get 4 runs in a Major League Baseball game, if you have a good pitching staff, you're usually in pretty good shape. You really are. It's the idea that the Braves struggle to get to that 4. They really do. They struggle to get to any indication that they belong is a top offense. And it was just a couple of years ago that they absolutely were the best offense. They'd broken all the records. And instead what you have now is you have a team that honestly struggles to put a crooked run up. You're elated if they get 1 run in the early going. It's usually later in the game when they get into a weaker bullpen that you see them actually take off. But I'll tell you this, the main thing that I see in the first things first. We were sold a bill of goods that Tim Hyer was going to come in and change the overall offense, that he was going to change the mentality, that they were going to work the counts, they were going to do the small ball, do the little things to win games. We have not seen that. Not one damn bit. It hasn't even been close to seeing that. You see spurts of it from time to time, but we have not seen this dramatic change in the offense that makes you feel like you got something going, that you could really do something with the offense going forward, that you could rely on it. Now, some of this is going to change when Ronald Acuna Jr. comes back, and I get that part of it. I understand that when Ronald Acuna Jr. comes back, this is going to be a team that is going to be, first of all, they're going to have the straw that stirs the drink back at the top of the order. And that is something to rely on. That's not nothing. It really isn't. But at the same token, it can't all be Acuna. And you also can't expect that when he comes into the fold that offense is just going to take off like a bat out of hell, because you're talking about an offense that, for all intents and purposes, for the first few weeks of him being back, you're going to have him, we'll say 30% of the time. You'll have him playing about 60 to 65% of the time when he first comes back, but expect a couple of duds out the gate. You can't expect him to all of a sudden be hitting 400 and getting on base and slamming the ball over the wall. So there's going to be a lot of games where he plays where he's going to be, I'm not going to say an automatic out, but he's going to be an out at the top of the order. So he's not going to be the thing that changes and fixes the whole thing. It's got to be the mentality, and it's got to be the approach. And we're not seeing it right now. Right now in Braves country, we are seeing a lack of an approach. We are seeing an offense that honestly is at best second rate. And I think that's a big at best. I think you're looking at an offense that's probably middle of the pack to the bottom. And the one thing that I would like to see them start doing, I was thinking about this the other day. What is the one offense that when I watched all this baseball for since the early 1980s, the one offense you feared the most, the one team you feared the most, of all the baseball that's going on since the early 1980s, it was those late 90s New York Yankees teams. And what it was the one thing that all of those Yankees teams had in common. I'll tell you what it was. Every one of those Yankee teams had an offense that had to be reckoned with. And it was never, I think there was always this misconception that the Yankees went out and overspent and bought all these championships. They built these guys coming up in their system. And one of the things that they taught them coming up in their system, now I'm not talking about some of the guys that they added like the Paul O'Neills and whatnot, but the guys like the Derek Jeters, the guys like Bernie Williams, the guys that would come up, Jorge Posada, right? They were taught through the system to work the damn count, to get on base. And when someone got on base, to continue to work the count, get them over, get them in. They didn't do a ton of bunting, but they made intelligent baseball plays offensively, meaning you weren't going in. You work the count and you get up 2-1, 3-1 in the count, I have no problem with you ambushing. My problem with their ambush, and they got the bad habit from Freddie Freeman, but Freddie Freeman's a special kind of hitter. Not everybody can be Freddie Freeman. My problem with their ambush is they're going up there first at bat, first pitch, Ozzie Albies, and ambushing a pitch on the outside part of the plate that he's chasing and then popping it up to third. That's not ambushing. That's just guessing and hoping for the best. And the Yankees really didn't have that much power if you look back at their numbers, Adam. The Yankees got aboard, and they had some power hitters, but you look at their big names over the years, they were not clobbering 50 home runs. They didn't have guys that were consistently hitting 40, 50 home runs. The Yankees got runners on, and the biggest thing that they would do when they would get these runners on and work the count is they raise that pitch count up. And you would hear Torrey and all the other guys talk about it over the years, that was their number one focus going into every series. Not just a playoff series, but I'm talking about a regular season series. And that's not nothing. When you can start working the count, getting the starting pitcher in trouble, because remember, this was the beginning of everybody paying attention to pitch counts. Pitch counts really weren't a thing until about the 90s, early to mid-90s, when folks really started paying attention to it. And so the Yankees picked up on the fact that if you can get these starting pitchers out of the game because of the pitch count, you could get into bullpens. And a lot of bullpens are not built for that, especially when you're talking about a 3 or 4 game series during the regular season. And so what the Braves are not doing is they're not getting those pitch counts up. The guy they pulled yesterday, Ledzinski, which I thought it was a bad decision to pull him, and I ended up being right at the time. If you remember, we were talking the game, because they brought the bullpen in, the bullpen imploded, but Pirates scored a run in the bottom of the 9th, and the rest is history. But they were not getting the pitch count up on Ledzinski. That's not why they pulled him. They pulled him because they just decided to pull him. He was at 72 pitches in the 6th inning. That's not a high number. None of these pitchers are ever getting into high numbers. We're never seeing a guy sitting in the 5th inning flirting with 100 pitches. You're not going to get it every game. The point is, you never see it. And it's the approach. And the approach, look, if we can't blame the previous, and I'm not just going to put it all on the previous hitting coach because he had a team around him. If we can't put it on him because nothing has changed, and you can't put it on the new guy because nothing has changed, then there's a problem at the top. There's a problem at the top where it's not being emphasized by Snicker, and not just that, but the rest of the brass. And then obviously there is a problem in the actual Atlanta Braves organization, and I'm talking about down in single A, high A, double A, triple A, all of it, the Florida State League, all of it. Because if you're not teaching them when they're first coming up, and I'm talking about guys like Ozzie who came up through the Brave system, I'm talking about guys like Acuna who came up through the Brave system, I'm talking about guys like Riley's kind of a bad example because he normally works the count. From time to time, you'll see an early out, but he normally works the count. But I'm not talking about the guys that they have brought in, but let's talk about Michael Harris. The majority of their outs are early pitch swing. When they work the count and they get in to that 2-2, 3-2 range, 3-1 count, usually good things happen, whether it's a walk or it's a base hit, extra bases. The one outlier of this entire thing, Drake Baldwin has done an incredible job. Drake Baldwin, I don't know where he learned his hitting from because it wasn't the Braves organization. You don't see any young player that comes up with the Braves that has the kind of approach at the plate that Drake Baldwin does. It must have just been taught to him at a very early age, long before he came to the Braves organization. Because you always see Baldwin go up there. He's taking pitches. He's working the count. And that gives everybody a chance to not only just see that pitcher a little more and run the pitch count up, but you usually get a better pitch to handle. I don't have a problem if you're sitting dead red, meaning that you have one spot, and if that ball comes in there at the early part of the count, you take a hack at it. But anything else you spit on, and you wait to see if the pitcher's going to make a mistake. But there has been a culture in the Braves organization of guys almost being scared to get to a 2-strike count because then they feel like that they can't assume a good pitch is coming because there's going to be a chase pitch. If you have that kind of mentality, you're going to put up the kind of crappy numbers that you see the Atlanta Braves put up. And we go to this series. First of all, the series is scheduled for a 4-game series. Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday morning. Technically Thursday afternoon, but it's 12:15. It's a very early start. I don't know if we're going to get those all in. If you've looked at the weather, the one tonight is very much in question. Now, Wednesday and Thursday are clear, but we may get a rain out or long rain delay tonight and or tomorrow night, and you may get a doubleheader in there somewhere. I think if the Braves can massage it and work it in their favor, they don't want a doubleheader on Thursday. They would much rather have a doubleheader on Wednesday, because Thursday being a getaway day, because they're heading to Boston the very next night for a big 3-game series. So, but we're going to go off the assumption that the entire series gets in and the starting pitchers are the starting pitchers and they don't pull someone up from the minor leagues. One good thing about this series, the Braves are going to dodge what is the Washington Nationals ace in Mackenzie Gore. He pitched yesterday. Now, the Nationals pitching has not been good at all. But the guy going tonight has been very good against the Braves over the last few years. That's Jake Irvin. He's been very good. He's going up against Grant Holmes, and he carves up the Braves offense normally because of, well, let's be honest, he knows what they're doing. He knows they're trying to ambush. And so he'll throw just a touch off the plate. He normally has a low pitch count going into the 5th and 6th inning. We normally see this guy go at least 6 of 1 or maybe 2-run ball. And this is going to be another grind, unless for some reason he's not on it. Now, there are outings where Jake Irvin can't find the plate. He's running up the pitch count, but it normally doesn't happen against the Braves because they're always out there trying to ambush. But Irvin has been up and down. He's got incredible stuff, but he has been up and down his entire career with Washington. Tomorrow night, it's Schwellenbach versus Mike Soroka. Now, if that isn't a we better win the damn game, that is a we better win the damn game. Mike Soroka's got an ERA over 7. As you can imagine, he's not much better than when we last saw him. And he's one of the few pitchers that I can say for a fact, when we have seen Soroka in an opponent's uniform, we have tattooed him. Hopefully that continues. He was looking a little better in the spring. He kind of came back down to earth. And like I said, he's got a high ERA. And then you've got Parker going versus Elder on Wednesday. That's kind of a toss-up, to be honest, because Parker, I'm talking about from the pitching standpoint. I'm not talking about from the Braves. The Braves offense on paper should be much better than Washington. But they outperformed us last year. They won the season series. And Parker should be a guy we could get to. Thursday, same thing, Williams. But he has pitched well against the Braves in the past. He's been with the Washington organization for quite some time. And he was a guy that was actually being rumored of the Braves going out and grabbing and being like a swing man out of the bullpen during the offseason. He ended up re-signing with Washington. But the point being, he's going up against A.J. Smith-Shawver, who has pitched very well. I never believe a youngster is going to absolutely come in and give you his A-plus stuff every time, because the track record just isn't there, and he has had a couple of outings. We won't see Chris Sale in this series. By the way, Friday night should be a treat. It's Chris Sale going back to Boston, facing the Red Sox against Garrett Crochet. Those are two elite left-handers. That is get your popcorn ready. But back to this series here against Washington. The key to this entire series, and when the Braves were racking up wins against the Nationals the last few years before last year, the key to the entire thing was the offense clicking. Washington's offense couldn't keep up. And their bullpen is not really something that you want to lean on if you're the Nationals manager. If you're the Nationals manager, what you're hoping for is the Braves to continue to do the same kind of things that they do, which works themselves into bad counts, early outs, long stints for the starting pitcher, and you have to use a very minimal amount of your bullpen. If you want to know who the worst bullpen is in all of Major League Baseball, it's the Washington Nationals. Their bullpen, and this is extraordinarily high, their bullpen is 7.13 ERA, and that's why it's going to be. That's why I led this off the way I did on this show. It's going to be critical to get into that bullpen because that bullpen stinks, and there's no metric that shows anything different. They have a decent closer, but you can't let it get to that point. The Braves are going to come in here on a 4-game set, and I don't care if there's a rain out or not. I don't care if you have to play a doubleheader. I expect to win this series. Bare minimum 3-1. But if you don't, if you go 2-2 or worse, you're really going to start questioning whether or not this is a good baseball team. When you look at all the metrics on the offensive end, you're going to say no, honestly. But in your mind's eye, you look at it and you go, well, they've got to have something going on there offensively when you look at the names that are in the lineup. But day in and day out, you have a bunch of guys who are barely hitting over the Mendoza line. Atlanta Braves, when you look at where we are right now, sitting 2 games under 500. And we had every opportunity this weekend to win that series and to be sitting at 500. And though you would have loved to sweep, I would have taken that. And I kind of would have just said, all right, you know what? That's good enough. But when you look at the bullpens in Major League Baseball, the Braves have worked their way down into the, top 12? And remember, it started off really bad. At the very beginning of the year, Braves bullpen was terrible. But they've worked themselves back, and the bullpen's doing well. Our biggest question is Iglesias. He had another bad outing. I'm still not the type that's going to say, let's panic and let's throw someone else in the closer role. But you know what I am ready for? I'm ready for them to bring in Craig Kimbrell, and maybe you give Iglesias a day off. And maybe you figure that out on the back end. Because Kimbrell's been pitching well. I understand what you're coming with, Adam, saying you're supposed to sweep the Pirates. A road series in a Major League Baseball, a sweep is never assumed. But you're supposed to win the series, that's for sure. And you're supposed to put a lot more runs up on the board than what the Braves did. I don't even care what the numbers say. That the Pittsburgh Pirates, who are in the bottom 10 of the league in the bullpen, their bullpen was underwhelming. There was no one that came out of that bullpen that made me think, man, Bednar looked pretty sharp, but he's been really up and down in his career. He's been a closer before. But just looking at the stuff of the guys coming out of the bullpen, that bullpen, there's nothing that jumped out at you. And so they should have been able to make more of a dent. But once again, the problem is going in, giving bad at-bats all weekend long. And it doesn't matter how good you think these guys are. If they're not putting in the right work, the right mentality, the right approach, you're going to come up with losses. game after game. And then let's also talk about the fact that the defense was crap over the weekend. They had several instances, and some of those should have been called errors. They weren't, but that was hometown cooking with the score keep. But like the one with Riley where he fumbled the ball all over the infield. I mean, that was ridiculous. That led to the 3-run inning that essentially cost the Braves the game. I'm talking about yesterday's game. This team is set to look. I see what you're saying, Adam, about going on winning streaks in June, July. You might want to go look at the schedule. This is when they're supposed to be winning. They've got the Pirates and the Reds. And what happened there? They've won 4 of 7. That's not overwhelming. Now we're at home against Washington for 4. Go to Boston, who's having their own struggles because they're fighting back and forth in their clubhouse about the whole Rafael Devers doesn't want to be a baseball player thing. But the next week to 2 weeks, we'll say week and a half, we have 8 games against the Washington Nationals. 3 in Boston, but 8 games against the Washington Nationals. I'm sorry, 7 games against the Washington Nationals. 4 of them in Atlanta. This is when you're supposed to be making up the ground. I just did a whole thing where I was setting all these Braves Country Todays. That's why I'm a little more familiar with the upcoming schedule than most. You start looking at that schedule, and this is the soft part of the schedule. Late May going into June, these are the series back-to-back, right? You've got the Padres at the Phillies, the Red Sox again, the Diamondbacks at the Giants, who are playing really good baseball, at Milwaukee, which we always struggle there. Then you do get a little bit of a breather with the Rockies and the Marlins, but it is interrupted by a 3-game series against the Mets. And then when you come off that series against Miami, it is another 4-game series at the Mets. And then they play the Phillies again. And when you get to July, it gets a little softer. But that month of June, late May into the entire month of June, it's going to be a grind. And when you get in July, it gets much more manageable. You're talking about having the Angels, the Orioles, the Athletics, and St. Louis. That I could see the Braves going on a run. But the way they're playing right now, they'll be about 500 baseball. And you've got to take advantage of the bums because you're going to see a tough part of the schedule at some point always, and it's almost right around the corner. We are a week and a half away, like I said, before we play the San Diego Padres, and we know what they did to us last time. Now, there ought to be some motivation there, but they're going to play the Padres and then the Phillies back-to-back. And the Phillies game is on the road, so this is going to be a tough go. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying, Adam. It's a gauntlet. But this is when you're supposed to be winning games. When you're playing teams that are essentially high AAA talent. They're not really Major League Baseball rosters. They're building towards the future. So that's about all I have on this today. I don't know if we're going to get this game in tonight or not. I will start the feed regardless so that folks who are stuck at work who didn't get a chance to listen to the whole thing on our YouTube broadcast, I'll still start it. But I'm going to keep an eye and see what time that they're projecting the game to start. Because I'm going to look at this one more time and let me double check. But the last time I saw it this morning, it was not looking good for a full, complete game starting on time. Now, maybe we get lucky. I was being projected here in the studio to get just buckets of rain over the last several hours, and it was. I mean, we got rain, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it was being projected. Let me see here. Man, you know my biggest problem is, can we get more ads when you click on a freaking website? All right, here we go. All right. We might be getting lucky today. Let me see here. thunderstorms coming in. So it's going to clear up around 6, but it's supposed to start raining again around 9. So that's going to be tough to get the game in. Hopefully it misses us somehow. In a smart world, we would start this game at 6 o'clock and get the game in, but they're not going to do that. They never do that. So I'm assuming the game's going to start on time. We get our starter in, and then we kind of go from there. And if you're looking at Tuesday, what does Tuesday look like? It's a little more. Tuesday actually doesn't look nearly as bad as it did before. They have changed the projections, and Tuesdays we should get most of the game in without any kind of delays. Wednesday and Thursday are supposed to be pretty clear. So hopefully we get the game in tonight, because I don't want to see Grant Holmes start busted up in any way. That's my biggest concern. Is that you get Grant Holmes out there, and next thing you know, he used 2 or 3 innings. They have a 3-hour rain delay like they've been having, and then you've got guys like De Los Santos, who we've used quite a bit in the last few days, trying to spell your way all the way to the 7th, 8th inning. My pick to click today, with Irvin on the mound, man, that's going to be a tough one. I mean, that is going to be a tough one. He's a tough right-handed pitcher that the Braves don't hit well against. I'm just going to take a swing at it, and I'll say that we'll go with, I guess, Matt Olson. If someone can get around on Irvin, it would be Matt Olson with that righty-lefty matchup. But what I want to see more often is him taking pitches. Even if you bury yourself into a count and get a 2-strike count, that's okay. Because all you're doing is popping up in the early part of the going anyways. Eat some pitches. Work that count. And if Verdugo continues to struggle, it might be time to think about leading someone else off and maybe sliding him down just to the 2-hole, and you drop the entire roster down. But we need someone who, because the last couple of days he's looked very frustrated. Very frustrated. Last couple of starts. And the one thing I did want to touch on, do y'all remember Friday night when they were going up against Bailey Falter, and there was an early strike put on Verdugo? Supposedly they couldn't find Verdugo. They didn't know where he was. And Snicker took the blame. And that ended up being a strikeout. It was a big strikeout, a big part of the game. Why does the manager not know where the hell his players are during the middle of a ball game? Why does he not know that? Just like, why didn't he know not to pinch hit with Eddie Rosario? There's something inherently wrong with the leadership in that clubhouse. And a guy who just got there, who's trying to really impress, you can't find him in the middle of the game when he knows this would be where he would probably be pinch hitting at. Like, if he had like a bathroom emergency or something, he goes, "Hey, Stan, I'll be right back." But man, okay. But he should be aware of where the hell he is. Not knowing, he said, "Well, we couldn't find him." You couldn't find him, but you'd already put him on the pinch hit. You'd already implemented him on your lineup and given it to the umpire and say, "Hey, we're pinch hitting so and so." You don't know where he is? That's a problem. That's a big problem. And anybody who continues to defend him, I really think you're just doing it with your heart because of what you remember in 2021. There's a big problem in that clubhouse, and I'm not going to put it all on Snit. But there was an article out this weekend, and it was an independent article, and they had him the number 2 guy on the hot seat in Major League Baseball. And this thing was written 4 or 5 days ago. Do you know who the number 1 guy was? It was the guy that just got his ass fired in Pittsburgh. So Snicker better wake up, because there's some rumblings going on about how he's not being a leader. And if that's all the way up to number 2 on a perceived national platform, you better know that everybody in that locker room is paying attention to that, and there's going to be some rumblings in the front office. And eventually, there's going to be some rumblings from ownership and other people that have actual clout in that organization. And I'll just leave you with that thought. Not pulling for Snicker to get fired. I think he's a good guy. But he better get his ass together. He better get the act together, because this is big boy job. You're no longer the AA manager trying to ride out a 40-year career. You were the leader of one of the top baseball, you can't say franchises right now because of the way it's been run recently, but it's one of the top baseball brands. It's one of the top brands in all of sport. And the fans are getting ticked off, and it's starting to show, and know where your guy is when you go to pinch hit him. My God. Y'all have a good one, Braves Country.